Okay, we're live.
We are live.
We made it.
Is that possible? I would just like to take a moment to praise all of the forces that came together to bring us to this moment of actually being able to go live on YouTube.
And your IT
Yeah,
Asan.
Asan, who
Thank
was
God for Asan.
stellar. Yeah, exactly. So after 16 tests, we are here. And I'm with one of my favorite people on the earth, Elizabeth Sabet, who is someone who has been instrumental in my journey in healing my sort of the fallout from my own Kundalini awakening. And it's because of her understanding of this process, the real depth to which she embodies it and has lived it and gone through it herself, that she's been able to help not only me, but so many other people really make sense of their spiritual awakenings, emergencies. And it's basically like your whole purpose for being here, I think. One of your purposes for being here is to facilitate people and getting to the other side of these experiences so that they can revel in the gifts. And I will just say that there were many moments where I was like literally standing on a cliff, like on the phone with you being like, Elizabeth, help, what's going on? And it was those moments where, having someone who could like sort of hold the perspective and the knowing that I was going to be okay, despite the fact that everything in my body was like, no, you're not, was totally instrumental in me getting to this point. And I just love you and I appreciate you. So we are here introducing you to the When Lightning Strikes community, because we only let our favorite people in as we try to cultivate a safe environment. And also doing our first YouTube live for your YouTube channel, which is awesome.
Yeah. When we managed to do it for both at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's amazing. Yes. So would you like me to read your bio, or do you want to? Sure. Okay. So let me just take a minute and introduce you to the When Lightning Strikes community, and also just reiterate for the people who are also watching from your side, who you are. So Elizabeth Sabet is the founder of the Institute of Transformational and Transpersonal Coaching, and she helps people who are awakening discover what these experiences mean for them and how to integrate and answer the call that arises from deep within their soul. Her coaching philosophy, your coaching philosophy, is based on the belief that all professionals working with people need to start by connecting and listening to the client's spirit first. Only then can we support the client in a fuller psycho-spiritual evolutionary process. She believes each spiritual or transpersonal experience deepens the client's awareness of higher consciousness levels and their calling. These experiences develop new aspects of the soul and call us to use our talents, gifts, and skills to support the evolution of our minds and that of planetary consciousness. Love it. The dilemmas experiencers face are many. Their values may have changed, but may still be living according to their values before their awakening. They are afraid of drastically changing their lives and possibly losing friends and family, or they want to change their whole life, but don't know what step to take first. So with 14 years of experience as a transformational transpersonal coach, Elizabeth helps her clients navigate both the light and dark aspects of the awakening process to create a life of purpose, sustainable connection, and empowerment through her spirit path coaching method. So I like it. Welcome. And I can say that you embody this, so just in terms of getting started and how we met, I met you through Katrina, who is my partner on the When Lightning Strikes film. And at the time, you both were working at Assist, which is or not working at, but you were.
Yeah, we were working, volunteering.
Yeah, but you were president and.
I was the president and she was the executive director.
Yeah. So I always reversed those. And I found out about that organization, which stands for the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences.
Right.
It's a mouthful, but there's no other really way to say it.
Yeah.
And I found out about that organization, was so grateful that something like that existed. Because when I first met Katrina, I was like, what is going on with me? I have no idea what this is. I'm going crazy. I'm dying. I can't, like, there's lightning in my body, all this crazy stuff. And she was like, I got you, girl. I know what you're going through. And there's this organization that I'm working with that's seeking to sort of train helping professionals and you can say more about that if you want, but and then I learned that you were president of it. And I think the first time we were going to meet was when you invited me to the conference.
Oh yeah, in Chicago.
Yep. And I couldn't go because I was too terrified to get on a plane, me, Miss World Traveler, and, terrified of my own shadow. And anyway, here we are now, all these years later. This beautiful community is forming. Your work is getting out there in a bigger way because more and more people are having these experiences and needing support. Yeah. And I think the planet is calling for that. So
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have like a couple questions to ask you, but is there anything you want to say before?
Well, I'm just so glad the universe put us together, because who knew? Because that was in 2017 or 2016. When were we in Chicago?
Over 2017.
2017, right? So 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years ago, who knew that, we were getting put together to create something bigger together. That's just the beauty. That's the beauty of this path. You just never know who you're going to get to meet and who you're going to get to know and to love and what you get to do together. It's just a real privilege. So I'm really grateful to God and the universe and all the powers that put us together. Yeah.
Same. And I agree that it's just continually surprising to be like, oh, you got me. Like,
yeah,
you know what you're doing.
When are we going to finally trust it? Right.
Exactly. Right. And all of techniques that people use to control, you kind of have to let go of at a certain point because you're like, something greater knows far better than I do. So it is really delightful. And I'm excited about what we're going to be bringing forward together. So more on that later. So I'll just start by asking you, so how did you get into working with people who are having, a rough time with their awakening?
Right. So in 2007, I decided to become a coach. I did change my life eventually, which meant letting go of a business that I turned out really loving, which was my childcare centers that I ran with my husband, and let those go and let that old life go, which was really hard. And in the process of it, asking myself, what do I really want? I really want authentic communication where there's safety, where I can bring my whole self, even if it's a freaking mess, and somebody's going to meet me there and not run away screaming.
Hallelujah. Like,
that girl.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I had two friends who were also going through transition in their life. And we decided that, that's what we all wanted. And my friend Edward said, we should have a potluck and bring all these people that we know together. And between the three of us, we live in a very ultra conservative community in West Texas, in Lubbock, Texas. And, but we all knew people that were studying different faiths or practicing meditation in different ways and in their own discovery process. And we thought, between the three of us, we know 100 people in this town. So let's send out an email and invite them to a potluck and we'll have somebody talk. And that lasted for 10 years.
Oh my God, that's so amazing.
Yeah. We met every month for 10 years for the potluck. And then we started having really 2 to 4 events a month, sometimes more. And so that, like I said, that coincided in the same year I decided to become a coach and shift from, because I had really been parent coaching when at the centers, I had started coaching parents and even doing home visits and working with people that were having problems, parenting.
Sure.
And so it was a natural transition for me to go to school to become a life and transpersonal coach or transformational coach. And so as these two things coincided, and I started sharing more of my own wacky, wild non-normal experiences, people that also had those felt comfortable talking to me. And
Mhm.
so I spent a lot of time visiting with people just as a spiritual friend. And eventually when I created my own, I had to create my own method, my own coaching method. um, I used Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I started at the top and worked my
Mhm.
way down and created a coaching program that started at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
So
And
cool.
yeah, and I found out from a friend of mine, Dr. Nicole Gruel, who's her PhD in transpersonal psychology, said, you know, that Maslow in his last year of life actually said he got it wrong and he should have started at the top. And I was like, maybe I
Imagine
learned that
that.
from Maslow. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
but I wanted to work with people in the way that I wish I could have had somebody work with me, which was from the top down, was from the spirit down. Like, let's listen really to what's going on in all parts of the psyche, you
Mhm.
know? So from the super conscious to the subconscious, the unconscious,
Mhm.
and let's kind of meet in the middle of the conscious mind and see what's happening here, and
Yeah.
find out what we really want, and then how are we going to go get that, and how are we going to break through
Yeah.
those blocks and those safety measures that we've put in place to not live from our spirit.
Yeah, those gatekeepers.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good word for it. And so I started working. So, when people were having uncomfortable, nonlinear, non-ordinary experiences, however they occurred, people would say, oh yeah, you need to go talk to Beth, you need to go talk to Elizabeth. And so I just started working with people. And, over those 10 years, I just in the community level and national, because I had my own spiritual emergency hotline at some place and took calls
Okay.
from literally all over the world on my phone, and just took emergency calls.
Wow.
Um, so I worked with hundreds of people within that 10 years, from you know, probably between 2008 and 2017,
Yeah.
that the organization was running, because I was doing Hope, the local organization, and Assist simultaneously
Okay.
the last couple of years. So at one point, and I think I talked about this before, so if y'all have heard this story, please forgive me, but one of our community members who had had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, a
Mhm.
unitive state of consciousness experience, her family wanted to have her committed, seen by a psychiatrist and committed. And she was having lovely experiences and she was very happy and okay. Probably the best that she'd been in a long time. But of course, it was um, her viewpoint of God broadened past the traditional Christian
Mhm.
viewpoint, and caused a lot of problems for her at her church
Mhm.
and with her home. And her pastor even eventually advised the husband to divorce her.
Oof. Yikes.
Yeah. And so she had brought me the work of Stanislav and Christina Groff and told me, Hope needs to do something about this, because she couldn't find a therapist anywhere.
Mhm.
So, long story, I found Dr. Janice Holden
Yep.
at the University of North Texas in Denton, and she taught differential diagnosis between psychosis and spiritual emergence and emergency. I asked her to come to Lubbock, and I hosted an academic conference, a symposium where we could train mental health professionals on the difference, because I didn't have anybody that I could safely refer my clients to
Right.
when they needed more than coaching and integration of their experience. Because as we know, when we go through an awakening process, Kundalini or otherwise,
Right.
it brings up our shadow aspect. It
Right.
brings up our guilt and our shame and our fear.
Yeah.
And when all we have is, you're going to burn in hell and you deserve to die because forever, because you had that problem that you didn't know how to solve any other way.
Mhm.
And then you go to therapy and you get labeled with a mental health disorder that
Yeah.
follows you the rest of your life.
Oh,
And then what?
then
So,
what?
and then what? Well, we know what happens to a lot of people. However, so anyway, Jan said, you need to talk to Yolene Stout of Assist, because she's doing on a national level what you're doing on a local level. So her first conference nationally was in 2012, and my conference here in Lubbock was 2013. So in 2014, we Hope co-sponsored the Assist conference in Dallas that year. And we took people, they got trained through Assist. I got trained through Assist that year and as well. And then in 2015, I was invited on the board. And in 2016, I became president. So
Amazing.
yeah. And then from 2016 to 2017, I was doing both Hope and Assist, which was
Yeah.
like, and my practice, which was I always tell people, running a daycare center, it's training.
Trained you.
You can do so much after you run a
Yeah,
daycare center.
I'm
So
sure.
yeah, but so that's how it happened. And like you said, I did go through my own Kundalini process, but I
Mhm.
didn't know that that's what it was. I
Yeah.
had no idea what was happening to me.
Yeah.
When I go back and think about it, it had to have started in my very late 20s,
Mhm.
when I went on a 3-day hunger strike and told God I wasn't eating until he showed himself to me. Because I was done meditating. I was like, I need to know something here. I need to know the truth.
Yeah,
I need to know what's going on.
totally.
And God revealed himself
Totally.
to me as a wave, hit me in the middle of my chest. And that slow process of my identity changing and not understanding even who I was anymore.
Yeah.
And I can remember saying to a friend, I don't even know who I am anymore. And the
Yeah.
only answer she had was good. And I was like, that's not
You're like, it's
helpful.
not good. It's kind of horrible. Yeah.
Scary. It's scary
Yeah.
to not know who you are anymore.
It's
Mhm.
terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love hearing that because it seems like such an organic unfolding, like
Yeah,
of, your
definitely.
purpose. Just like, I think sometimes we look back and we're like, oh, like, of course, like this. And then, only in retrospect can we like really see the way all of the like pearls lined up.
That's
But
right.
it's so like, to me, I have such appreciation for you and Assist and Hope and all the people that, you just spoke of, because there is nothing more traumatizing than being in trauma, not knowing what's going on with you, and then having to like be labeled as something you're not. But then also, in my experience, I found myself having to educate my healing professionals, which is like,
Yes,
you're needing to be held so you can like fall apart. Like you're needing some sort of
that's right.
scaffolding as
That's
your
right.
identity falls apart. And yet you're having to hold up these other people. And it's just like the opposite of what needs to happen, which I feel like is then another trauma to undo later. Like I would say my process is like a lot of this stuff, it's going to be ongoing forever, but it's like I'm functioning now, but I'm really still undoing the trauma of having that just misunderstanding. And so I'm so grateful for that intention and that working toward you're working towards that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to be told by the people that you love the most and that you want to please and be with the
Yeah.
rest of your life because you love them. And they
Yeah.
tell you, oh, you're lost. You don't know what you're talking about. This will be over in a few years. And, don't,
Right.
you're just lost.
Right.
Well, I found something actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, or to have, I'm just like having such chills as you're talking, but or to have them, everybody's entitled to their experience, but I've had a lot of people think they knew what was going on because they could only compare it to their experience, and I
Right.
knew it was different, and
Right.
so I felt very dismissed. And so the more we can like be in conversation like this and just bring this to the light, I feel like people will have permission to feel what they're feeling and go through what they're going through without the additional trauma of misunderstanding and
Right.
unbelonging and confusion, and also really have like maybe more of a reverence for it, and by understanding it.
Right. Like our indigenous cultures and our First Nation cultures have a respect and an understanding for it. Right. So when
Exactly.
people went through what we went through,
Right.
they were taken to the medicine woman or the medicine man.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
right. And oftentimes they, if they could be integrated, they were trained as the next, they were the medicine man or the medicine woman in training.
Exactly.
Right. I actually received I was made an honorary intertribal medicine woman.
Really?
Yeah, in January of '08, and I was made the most beautiful medicine shawl.
Aw.
And I didn't really recognize, I didn't know that that was going to happen. I had set up some event for women that Spirit told me to set up.
Mhm.
And I was told to gather all the women that I could. And and yeah, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be this weird. I don't want to be the weird one.
I
No.
know. Too
And
late. Yeah,
it's like, no, no more weirdness. Enough
I
is enough.
know. Yeah.
And but I did, and I had 50 women sitting in a circle in my living room, and it was a very ceremonial thing. And at the end of the beginning, well, anyway, at some point, a friend of mine who is a native for First Nation woman uh, put me in the center of the circle and made me my shawl and gave me my my honorary title. And if that could have happened
Right.
in the late 90s or the
Right.
early 2000s,
Right.
I really think that I could have preserved my family the way I wanted to preserve my family.
Yeah.
If I could have had I mean, I don't, didn't need an honorary title and be special, but just some recognition that
Right.
I'm not lost and I'm not crazy.
Right.
And while this is really uncomfortable
Right.
and disorienting, I'm going to be okay. And I just need
Yeah.
to drop into and relax into this more expanded identity and
Yeah.
grounding. Mhm.
It's like a baptism of sorts. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I was having a conversation with a woman who, her story is very much like ours. And she does a lot of, Kimberly, if it's you, she does a lot of work with healing of the witch wound. And we were talking about how,
Mm.
if like in indigenous cultures and tribes, like it would have been like you would have been the one, or we would have been the ones that, not to make anyone more special than another, but it's just like
Right.
different roles
Yeah.
that were nurtured, actually brought in, nurtured, and had all needs met, so that we could actually fulfill, have that gift emerge, rather than like the absolute opposite, which is just what happens in our
I just
culture.
took a deep breath when you said that. As you were talking, I just took a deep breath and
Yeah.
whole body just relaxed. Yes, this
Yeah.
is what we're needing as
This
a
is a gift, and it feels like hell. It can feel like hell. It doesn't always have to,
often.
but it often does. And that's sort of I guess the baptism of it. But yeah, so yeah, Kimberly is one of us, and she's amazing. And I'll introduce. We can maybe
I'd
put a
love
link or
that.
something. So yeah, well, that's amazing, and I love you even more now that I've learned more of your story. But so why do you think, I mean, it seems like sort of obvious now, but that people struggle with these openings into new dimensions and
Right. Well,
asking themselves so much. Yeah.
we've talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
so first of all, depending on the awakening, if it was a more gentle awakening or something, a very spontaneous experience, nonlinear, non-ordinary experience, and it happens very quickly.
Mhm.
It's like getting the rug pulled out underneath you.
Yeah.
One of the experiences I had was driving down the street, and all of the sudden, everything was different. Like I was in a one-dimensional land, and I realized that none of this was actually real, which I know sounds kind of psychotic, right, to some people. But that was a little disorienting. So if it's a slow thing, it's this gradual
Yeah.
immersion into a recognition that there's something more, and there's something more.
Yeah.
So the disorientation, the not knowing how to stand in the ground,
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
of that new knowing, and
Mhm.
not know how to anchor that into your experience where you're still going to be an acceptable part of your society.
Right.
So there's either resistance to that,
Right.
or there's either the resistance to that, or there's the all in,
Mhm.
and then people are freaking out
Mhm.
around you, and other people
Yeah.
go into a state of emergency. The people
Right.
around you go into a state of emergency.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then, there's oftentimes a value shift, and your
Yeah.
values change. And you feel like a duck out of water, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then there's that incongruent, or, there's also the aspect of, okay, I'm being shown this higher vision of myself, but I can't relate.
Right. Yeah. Because there's so much like shadow coming up and
And programming, it's like, no. And it's like a Christian being told, from the time that we're young, we're told, the glory of Christ within you. And
Mhm.
Jesus telling you that you're to do greater than he is. But
Yeah.
then that's not cultivated in you
Right.
as a traditional religion.
Right.
That religion, then that the traditional religion in that particular religion does not train you
Right.
to become that.
Right. It's not an embodied, it's maybe like a
Oh
something
yeah.
cool, but it's not an embodied like,
Yeah, maybe
yeah.
some people are like that, right? So, but when you get told that, that dichotomy arises, and you have to be with that. And then I think um beyond the identity
Yeah.
problem, then there's the physical problems that
Mhm.
many people have,
Mhm.
because they experience energy differently, and they can feel energy in their body. They can have temperature changes that don't have anything to do with hormones,
Yeah.
right? You can start having physical pains in the body.
Yeah.
And so when I work with people, the very first thing I do is I tell them they need to go to the doctor, and
Yeah.
they need to have a neurological exam, and they need to have a wellness, a physical annual kind
Mhm.
of checkup,
Yeah.
and to make sure, because a lot of times we can have chest pains,
Yeah.
right? Because the energy, the consciousness is rising, and it's hitting old stuck pain energy
Yep.
in the heart center, and so people can think they're having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And so you've got to make sure. I had at one point, I had 3 EEGs done in 18 months,
Yeah.
and I
Been
was
there.
like,
Yeah, me too.
I'm gonna have a heart attack. I just know it. It's
Yeah.
But no, it was grief and guilt and shame.
And yet no one could find anything wrong with you, which is like the most
No,
frustrating thing because you're like, please give me something to,
yeah.
something to
Is
do
there a
about
heart
this.
pill I
But
need to
yeah,
take?
yeah,
Like, do I need to
no,
be on heart
nothing wrong, nothing
medicine?
physically wrong, everything checks out.
Blood pressure perfect, everything great.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
those physical sensitivities can be
Right.
really
A
hard, right?
hormone, like,
I think one of
yeah,
us,
totally.
yeah, yeah. So,
Um,
so those physical sensitivities
yeah, I
are.
really felt,
Can you hear me?
yeah, it was just a little delayed on my end. I don't know if it was on yours. So
Okay.
yeah.
So, and then there's of course the potential of hearing and seeing things that you would not normally see or hear.
Hmm.
Right. So there's so many different types of experiences that people have, these transitory spiritual experiences that people have when they
Yeah.
begin their awakening process.
Yeah.
And so the identity, the physical body, the experiential aspect, and being able to understand, how do I now stand in the ground of this fluctuating reality of my experience and still function in this world and
Right.
still keep the approval of the people I love?
Right. Which is an
Uh,
additional, like, yeah, because there are a lot of times for a lot of people where you kind of can't function. Like I
that's
was
right.
totally dependent on my dad. My dad had to drive me around because I couldn't see. And like I was just terrified of everything, but not like literally of anything in particular. It was just like a primordial sort of terror. So
Right.
it affected everything.
Hmm.
And there's you had said like, to how do I still maintain the approval of the people around me? And often I feel like for people in this process, who, you know, we're highly sensitive. So we may be the ones that have been taking care of everyone else
That's
for
right.
quite some time.
Exactly.
And now we need to be taken care of. But then how are we? It's just kind of a cluster. It can be a clusterfuck because it's like, you know, you're being taken care of by someone that you also have needed to take care of, and like emotional, whether it's emotionally or physically. It's just like, it's hard. It's just downright hard. Like it's just hard. There's a lot of yeah. This is not an easy path if you're
It's
not in
not.
an ashram. But
That's right.
as we've seen, it is guided and you do get where you're going eventually. So
Yeah.
through meeting other souls along with
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you about like your work with your clients. When your clients are struggling with their integrations and their new paradigm realizations, how do you work with them? What do you find helpful? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, the very first thing I do with people within the first couple sessions is the value
Mhm.
examination and testing.
Yeah.
And we literally test values one against the other, and
Mhm.
all the values get tested one against the other. And then we look at where are their value conflicts,
Mhm.
and how are they going to decide when they have a value conflict, what
Mhm.
is the principle what are the principles that they're going to be living by, and then how do they choose based on their values and principles. And
Interesting.
also then what do you want to preserve, right?
Okay.
What do you want to preserve from your life pre-awakening, or in the process of integrating, um, what relationships, what gifts, talents, and skills,
Yeah.
right? What's important now, and what has been ignored in the past from the spirit. So connecting to that spirit and letting it speak. And I usually use somatic practices and guided imagery and um, meditative practices to help that part speak if it can't speak well yet,
Hmm.
right, on its own, the superconscious mind. So
True.
helping people have access to that superconscious and the subconscious, like I said earlier, meeting in the middle in the conscious mind, where the conscious mind can then consciously choose, because the subconscious mind is
Yeah.
instantaneous. It's choosing. There's
All.
no lag time in the subconscious mind. It is always the
Yeah.
actual chooser. But when we bring it to light, and we can say, and we look at what part of you has been choosing so far,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
now how can we integrate these choosing, and then in that we find, and in coaching, it's not therapy. We don't go back to the past to heal it. We go back to
Yeah.
the past to
Yeah.
learn what it is that you learned and what it is that you decided. Because many of our decisions are made about what life is and the truth and how we're going to manage it
Hmm.
pre-verbal,
Right. Yeah.
before we can even speak, these
Yeah.
decisions are made. And when you work with people in this psychosynthesis, is what
Yeah.
Roberto Asciagioli, it's that process of psychosynthesis that I use.
Hmm.
And so when we go into that process, they're like, oh my God, like I was 10 months old. Yeah, you were 10
Yeah.
months old, right?
I
So
know. Yeah.
so then we bring that 10-month-old into the conversation, or however old this part is, and we bring that into the conversation, and we create dialogue between the two.
Yeah.
That's a technique that's often used and extremely successful.
I remember
And
doing some of that with you, and also the part where it was like, what do I want to keep from the past? Because it was so terrifying. That was like, I really actually like who I was. Like, I'm not going to be her anymore.
yes,
And you like totally gave me permission to be like, no, you get to choose to be the aspects of Kate that you want. Like, that's not going anywhere. Because
yeah,
everywhere else it was like, oh, your ego is totally disintegrating and you're gonna like become like a ghost of yourself and you're not real. And like, talk about adding terror to an already terrifying process.
right. Well, that's called level confusion.
Ah,
Dr. David Hawkins talked about this a lot.
okay.
Okay. Um, about level confusion. So what happens is we have these temporary
Mm-hmm.
higher experiences in
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, and we gain some information, or we gain a new reference point of reality.
Sure.
And then we come back down into the physical, into all our programming and our experiences and our decisions that we made that we didn't even know we made. And we come back down into this with that reference point. And
Mhm.
so especially for people who've experienced unsafety, or who their subconscious is holding them in a safe but disempowered place,
Mhm.
to go look at that and say, that's, oh no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the guilt might set in, like, oh my God, I'm missing out. Like, oh, I'm not doing my work and I can't be that or hold that. And so,
Right.
but so this level confusion that, and then people start projecting that as truth for everybody. Well, at
Okay.
that level of consciousness, at that higher level of consciousness, that is the truth.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. That is the experience of reality at that particular level of consciousness, but it's not the reality down here. That's
Mhm.
why we have to look at each individual's integration process and let their spirit speak about that to them. And so,
Yeah.
and then pick up those pieces gently and slowly and gradually. When the psyche is ready, it will reveal what pieces that were fragmented off from the whole are
Mhm.
ready to gently come back up into and be loved and held into a place of being knit back together slowly and
Yeah.
gently. But when we start projecting these higher level truths, like everything's an illusion and,
Right.
this, whatever, I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm not saying it is. What I'm saying
Right.
is if you're wanting to be helpful to somebody in a
Yeah.
state of spiritual confusion or emergency, um, or questioning, if you want to be helpful, why
Right.
don't you let their spirit tell them where they are right now, and how, and what and how needs to be expressed at this moment? Because
Yes.
all that matters right now, all that matters is right now,
Yes. Right.
right now, right
Oh.
now, right now. And strengthening the container of the consciousness to eventually be able to hold that higher space,
Mhm.
without breaking and splitting apart.
Right.
Because this is what happens, okay,
Yeah.
in higher consciousness. This is
Yeah.
one of the things that can happen. So there's a Buddhist bodhisattva, right,
Mhm.
that is said to have attained a great consciousness. And then he saw and he made this commitment, right, to help all souls stop suffering.
Right.
But then he saw the multitude of souls that were suffering,
Yeah.
and he split into 1,000 pieces,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because he saw all of the suffering, and that there were so many souls, and when is this suffering ever going to end?
Ugh.
And
Yeah.
then I won't go into the details of this story, but then he was put back together as the 1,000-headed, 1,000-armed bodhisattva
Right.
that was put back together through love and compassion to be
Right.
able to to handle that is yes. And in order to handle that, then
Yeah.
there's more compassion needed. So Dr. Hawkins talked about that as well,
Mhm.
that he became an atheist at one
Mhm.
point because he was on a walk in the woods and he experienced the totality of human suffering.
Mhm.
And he said, I can't believe in a God that would allow this.
Right.
And then, later in life, he had his experiences and became a great teacher.
Right.
So it's so important that if you're on this path and you have discovered a truth, before you spout it off to somebody else, check in with yourself and see how well you're able to embody that,
Mm.
and where you are in your own integration process. And is it helpful? I mean, does it matter if it's true right
Hopeful.
now? Is it helpful to this person that is
Yes.
having a hard time holding in the container of their consciousness, their conscious
Yeah.
mind, what they've already experienced? So just
Right.
slow down a little.
I'm feeling so grateful for you. Like I almost want to cry because it just feels so compassionate and so honoring of each individual's path
Mhm.
and the nuances of how we're all different and how we've had, you know, our own fractures in consciousness early on, and what you know what the path is requiring of us as we kind of, it doesn't just happen. It's like expansion contraction, and like just to be just that attunement, I guess is what I'm saying. I feel like that attunement is like the most healing thing, and I so appreciate, like I'm really feeling the depth of to which you work with people on that level. And I felt it when we were working together, and I'm just really grateful that you've like been able to kind of name that and embody it.
Mm, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, it's a daily practice for all of us. You
Yeah.
know, I have to check my ego every day.
Yeah.
You know, I had a real dark night process this fall.
Yeah.
You know, I saw some really ugly stuff that came up spontaneously. And I was like,
What the
oh
fuck?
my
What are you?
God, where did all this hatred and resentment and bitterness come from? Like, no, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that. And, but it was a great gift,
Mhm.
right? Like, I
Yeah,
didn't, you know, that's why we have to stay humble, because we never know. There,
exactly.
there's so much suppressed and repressed. And
Yeah.
this was mine. This was definitely mine. This was not the collective unconscious that I was picking up and healing. However, it does help heal the collective unconscious every time we do our part,
Yeah.
and that we acknowledge, oh yes, I was harboring hatred.
Yeah.
I was harboring resentment. I was feeling so disempowered
Yeah.
and so nothing and
Yeah.
worthless that I actually harbored hatred towards
Mhm.
somebody. You know, please forgive me. You
Mhm.
know, forgive myself, forgive that person. Ask them for forgiveness, you know,
Yeah.
make amends, right? Um, but as we as we commit to doing this work, because
Yeah.
that's the work, right?
Yeah.
As
Yep.
we commit to doing this, that's what strengthens the container of our consciousness,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
To be able to hold that expansion contraction when it arises. And like you said, the humility is um it's I've learned that humility is one of the number one things to look for in a guide or teacher. It's like if someone proclaims that they have the answer or they know something or are like super certain, like certainty is kind of a red flag for me.
Well,
You
you
know,
know, they can be certain for themselves, but to not
right.
project it onto well, like I said, I named my channel Love's Answer because
Yeah.
um right, what I am certain of and what I have become certain of in all of my experiences and my nonlinear travels on the other side with you know, the dearly departed, is that um the only thing I really trust, and I know for a fact for me, is
Mhm.
that I am never alone, and that
Mhm.
wherever I am in whatever suffering, there is something in consciousness that is loving and that is compassionate, infinitely compassionate and loving beyond our comprehension, that extends itself out to me. And no matter what darkness I find myself in, as long as I ask for help, help comes. And,
Amazing.
you know, and so, um, I think Jesus said the peace of God is free. You just
Mm.
need to ask.
Mhm.
And I've, and my one experience with Jesus,
Mhm.
um, it, that was my experience with Jesus.
That's amazing.
And so, yeah. So when I know that that is my role, is to
Mhm.
be that as much as I possibly can. And when I find something unloving in myself, to take it to love, because
Mhm.
I know love will not reject me no matter what I did or what I said.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I can be healed, and hopefully that will help others.
Yes, that is the work. That is so beautiful. And I love that name for your channel, Love's Answer. Like that's just gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
so impersonal. It's like it's impersonal and also deeply personal.
But that is what the creator is,
Right.
both personal and
You
impersonal.
know, it's like we enter paradox land and we
Yeah.
we like it's like, oh, okay, all those cliche, those things I thought were cliche are actually really profoundly true. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, so I guess I'll ask you, so like a lot of people who struggle with, sharing what they're going through with their friends and family, what would you say would be, the first step to having those difficult conversations, or how to approach them?
I know it's really hard when we're being projected on and when people are not capable of trying to understand,
Yeah.
that it might be hard for us to have compassion. However, that's the first work, is to have compassion for them. And remember, I think I said earlier that when we have an emergency or when we change and we shift, it can create an emergency for the people in our lives.
Yeah.
And so to recognize that perhaps everybody is in a state of emergency, and can you please treat them the way that, you know, um, you want to be treated, and then find out. I have a very wise friend who told me about the platinum rule, like the golden rule. The golden rule is treat people the way you want to be treated, but the platinum rule is treat people the way they want to be treated.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
my very wise friend Pat McManus. And
Yeah.
so and uh he and so, I was like, oh, that's really, quite brilliant. How do I know how they want to be treated? Well, I have to ask them.
Mhm.
Right. So that's the first thing, is to maybe seek that information out, and seek first to be understanding
Mhm.
rather than understood, as St. Francis has one of
Mhm.
his teachings. Right. And
Mhm.
then the other is to recognize that you cannot take them into your experience with you.
Right.
That's one of the great travesties of having a light filled experience, is that
Yeah.
you want so badly for people to have that experience of compassion and love, and you just can't give it to them the way that you want to.
Nope.
So understand that you're not really ever going to be able to convey the depth of how that experience affected you.
Yeah.
The best that you can do is be an embodiment of that.
Yeah.
And then um, one of the things that I wanted so badly and didn't have was a professional, like a marriage family therapist, that could really understand and meet me there, and
Mhm.
help have these difficult conversations with my who's unfortunately now my ex-husband.
Mhm.
And um so to have these conversations, so uh Dr. Nicole Grohl said
Mhm.
that what she recommends people do is she tells the experiencer, let's put this experience to the side for just a moment.
Mhm.
Let's put this process actually to the side for just a moment, and let's
Mhm.
talk about what's important for both of you,
Mhm.
and what do you still have in common, and what is in how can you meet each other in hearing what is true for you now. So a
Mhm.
skilled family marriage therapist, we need many more of them. If there are any of you
Mhm.
out there listening to this, I really encourage you to get a hold of Assist. Little
Yeah.
plug for Assist right now, www.acist.org,
Yeah.
and email them about their training,
Mhm.
because we need you. and then also to find, if you can't find a family and marriage therapist, maybe to find a facilitator, a
Mhm.
community that could also speak to the family and the friends as well, so that you
Right.
can find somebody. You can also, there's now so much more information online even than there was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, you're going to find a list of 11 or 12 support organizations.
Yep.
Contact them, see if they have somebody that can help facilitate a
Yep.
conversation. There's one more thing, and I tell people you need to know what questions you have. So,
Mhm.
so if you go to talk to somebody, you need to tell them what you need,
Mhm.
and to be able to articulate that, which is really hard. Kate,
Mhm.
you said something earlier that was really important. You needed a scaffolding to
Mhm.
hold you while, and you didn't say, a strong structure. I just want to go
Right.
back to the way you language that, because it was really
Interesting.
brilliant, right? You
Ooh.
didn't say I needed to go into a place with 4 padded walls. I
Right.
did.
Right.
Right? What does the scaffolding do? A scaffolding is something that you put around something that is being built so that you can safely work on that new structure, right?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So I need a scaffolding. I need a safe place, not a rigid, permanent structure that you put me into and tell me I have to go be that way in that structure.
Right.
I need a new structure. I need a safe place. I need somebody to help me communicate this with you. I
Right.
need, I'm needing financial support,
Right.
right? I'm needing food. I need to know what to eat because some foods I'm sensitive to now that I wasn't sensitive
Right.
before. Right. So I have a list of questions, like of
Oh,
support questions that, people can have a free resource
yeah.
on my website that they can
Nice.
check out in the comments, or not comments, but in the section of this video on YouTube. So
Yeah.
go there. There's so many places now. Like we have the Shades of Awakening on YouTube. Not YouTube, but Facebook.
Yep.
Assist has a private forum. Kate, what you are developing, let's
Yep.
we need to plug this
Let's
because
plug it.
when
Yep.
lightning strikes community where
Yep.
there's free things happening, right?
Yeah, circles of integration circles. And one of the things we want to do is actually have a friends and family circle. So maybe you want to help, maybe we'll talk about designing that together, because just to be able to have another person, professional, and also people who have been through it, like validate you.
Right.
So you don't have to hold it all yourself. I think is can be hugely beneficial.
That's right.
And so
And
that those people also can have some holding themselves.
but
Because
that's right. So
you've been scared.
resources. So the more resources that you can bring to your friends and family, even before you
Yep.
talk to them, if it's
Yep.
possible, I mean, it's not always possible,
Yep.
but bring them the resources. So I do a Thursday night, 8 p.m. CST, Central Standard Time,
Mhm.
clubhouse meeting that friends and family can come to. It's called the Integration
Nice.
Collective,
Nice.
and that's weekly free. And
Awesome.
then what I recommend is everybody go to that Assist website and print out their cultural competencies guidelines for professionals.
Okay.
There's so many resources on that document. And what I recommend when I work with people, if they've been working with a mental health professional,
Yeah.
excuse me, or they need to go see a therapist, is to
Yeah.
print that out and take it to their appointment
Oh,
or to
that's
email it
so
to their
helpful.
therapist. Yeah.
That's so helpful. Yes.
Like let's use the resources that these
Yeah.
organizations have created.
Right. Exactly. And
Mhm.
we'll link them. We'll link to them too, because this will be posted in our
And
community, and we'll link
yeah,
them. We'll link them too. And
yeah,
yeah, just keep resource sharing and
yeah.
um, yeah, that's amazing. Um, to actually think about back in the day, like to actually have had something to bring to the
I
session. Like, oh my
know.
God.
If I could have taken this to, if I would have known this was a thing,
Yeah.
if I could have taken it to my therapist or
Yeah.
to my husband and said, this is what I'm talking
This is
about.
a thing.
I still love you. You're
It's a
still important.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we have marital issues that don't have anything to do with this thing that's happening to me, but
Yeah.
let's work on all of it, shall we?
Right.
I didn't have that. I didn't have that courage. I didn't have that empowerment, and I didn't have the resources. And I think if I would have had the resources, I would have had the
All the
empowerment.
others. Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's
Yeah.
all about resources.
Hmm.
So here we are creating them, and I'm so grateful. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Either. Me either.
um, so okay, so what are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make when they try to seek the higher states of their experiences again and again, or when they get homesick for, maybe they've
Oh, yeah.
experienced, but
Mhm.
then fallen back into a trough, so to speak.
Yeah. So again, if you've had a higher experience, however it occurs, spontaneously or through psychedelics,
Mhm.
and you've suffered a lot in your life, I mean,
Mhm.
who wants to go back to a lower state? Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody's smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, you want that higher experience to
Yeah.
last forever.
Mhm.
Um, but unfortunately, we can become addicted to it. And we have to recognize that I'm resisting being with the fuller integration process.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself meditating too long. And yes, you can meditate too long. How do I know this? It was part of how I managed. You know, I meditated I was able to actually, once I got past a 30-minute meditation, I was like, oh, wow, that really happened. I really had the experience of silence.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
then the
Oh,
non-silent mind said, I want more, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
meditated for way too many hours at a time every day.
Yeah.
And which, you know, like you said, if you're in ashram, that is great. And with a teacher that can help prepare you for that and support you through that, that's great. But if you're on your own,
Yeah.
it's not helpful. It's not a
Yeah.
great way to live life.
Yeah.
So, you know, to slow down,
Hmm.
take a deep breath, maybe stop meditating, and maybe
You
stop
heard it here
meditating.
first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stop doing psychedelics to have the experience over and over. Um, and recognize that you really may experience a dark night of the soul, and that you may have to experience a
Mhm.
dark night period in
Yeah.
order to discover what else is wanting to be cultivated
Yeah.
or healed or restored in you without that external process.
Yeah.
And so it's hard, but you know, I recommend that you find your community first, that you find a helper first,
Yeah.
a spiritual teacher that doesn't have any attachment to whether you attain a state or not.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say too, is like the people around you that can remind you, because that state, sometimes that dark night state, the voice of it is like, this is forever. So to have, my friend who's also part of our community, Danny Antman, talks about expansion, contraction, and stasis, and how we're always going between
Mhm.
these things, but that we resist. Obviously, like you said, like, who wants to feel crappy? Nobody
Right.
or smart wants to feel crappy. But the voice, like, I find that the voice of that state is like, this is forever. And it's like, you kind of have to have this meta consciousness of like, okay, no, it's not. That's the voice of this state, or people around you who are like, we know that the pendulum is swinging this way and that it will also swing this way. And maybe we don't know when, but that's what's happening. And so community becomes everything. Hence, here we are
Right.
creating it.
And
Mhm.
suicide is a big risk. And
Yep.
so some people choose to end their physical life
Mhm.
because one woman shared that she was fine. She just knew she didn't belong here, and she was just ready to go.
Yeah.
She wasn't in suffering, and she was fine.
Yeah.
And when she woke up from the attempt and realized she was still here, she was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm supposed to be here." That's not how it is for most people.
Right.
For most people, they are in terrible suffering, and they want and need that suffering to end. And
Right.
so people do successfully commit suicide.
Yeah.
And some people have unsuccessful suicide attempts because
Yeah.
it is too much and they can't handle it anymore.
Yep.
So if you are in that place where you can't handle it anymore, I so strongly encourage you to reach out to Assist has a support directory with mental
Yeah.
health professionals that we've trained. Call the
Yeah.
suicide hotline,
Yeah.
and look for mental health professionals that understand about awakening and spiritual experiences,
Yep.
and go to somebody that who can help, and then also seek community of
Yep.
people that aren't going to tell you what is the truth and what is not the truth,
Right.
like the community that you're creating when lightning strikes.
Yeah. No, we're just, it's like there's no hierarchy here. There's just people supporting other people and providing
Right.
understanding, and that, yeah, and to be able to feel safe in saying, hey, like, I'm feeling vulnerable. We really want people to be able to, communicate that level of vulnerability
Mhm.
in this community. Yeah, because it can be so hard to, when you're in that kind of a state, like, have the wherewithal to then find resources. So, like, let us support, let us help you. We will make it as easy
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it breaks my heart to think of like Elle Colley, you must know her, and people who
Mm.
it's like I remember like people saying to me like, oh, but you're so strong. Like, my dad would always be like, you're so strong, because I'd be like, I've been suffering for 698 days in a row without relief. And he'd be like, that's why you're so strong. I was like, I'm not strong. I'm just still living. Like, I just haven't died. Like, this isn't me being like, okay, I got this. Like, I'm going to power through another day. I just had no choice because it's just what was happening.
Well,
And like,
but you see,
right.
I think you did have a choice. But okay, when you say you had no choice, there's, to me, what that's telling me about you as a
Mhm.
consciousness, as an individuated soul, is
Uh-huh.
that something in your the container of your consciousness had developed the strength to be with that level of suffering.
Mm.
Um, however, that
Mhm.
is ridiculous to let somebody suffer for 690 days, right? But again, our people that
Inhumane.
love us, that's the, that's something that a loving person would say to somebody that they love, trying to strengthen them. That's
Yeah.
why, I know that we have anti-medication people in these communities that are
Yep.
like, don't medicate me.
Yep.
Um, I am not that person. I'm saying,
Nor am I.
what I'm saying, and my personal philosophy is, don't medicate and label that person with a mental health disorder
Mm-hmm.
as first choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless they are at risk of harming themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes medication helps people stay in process to
Yes.
be with the dissolution of the enculturated self and the integration of the higher conscious mind. And that
Yes.
if they don't have the medication, they can't be in process.
Absolutely.
And so to not vilify that either, right?
Right.
And maybe somebody does have a concomitant mental health issue as well,
Yep.
and that the diagnosis isn't a vilification or a denial that they are on a higher consciousness pathway of higher consciousness as well. I think we
Right.
need to get over this. I'd like to see, let's just,
Yeah.
why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't it be both?
And yeah,
If
exactly.
that's what it is.
Right. And even just those, like mental health states. I remember with several of my therapists, I'd be like, please tell me I'm bipolar. Like one of my therapists was like, Kate, stop trying to like cozy up in a little corner of the DSM-5. Like, and I'd be like, but that would be so easy because then you could give me medication. And I took medication. I took benzos, the one that people say is the worst one.
Right.
And yet I will tell you that it made all the difference for me. And I don't care if I don't care like what anybody has to say about that. It's like, I wouldn't still be here without that medication.
Whether
So,
somebody's taking pharmaceuticals or they're doing psychedelics,
right,
or they're doing what they need to do to stay in process. It's
right.
right. Let's stop the judgment and find out where this person, like I said, go back and let that spirit's person talk to
Yes,
him and let that spirit tell us.
exactly. Right. And then what's helpful given what we have access to for
Right.
them right now in this moment. Like you said, this is the moment, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one that
Right.
matters.
Right.
Oh, I love you.
Yeah. I love you too.
I'm so glad we're doing this.
Me too.
So okay, so let's see.
We've been on for like an hour
I
already.
know. So do you want to just like we could do
Wrap
like a
up.
part two, or we could do, we're gonna be continually in
Yes,
conversation. So
we are. We
do you
are.
want to do you want to share one final piece of advice around awakening and what you would say to our audience about
Yeah.
any
So
of this?
there's, yeah, just kind of in summary, maybe.
Mhm.
You know, what are, if you're suffering in your spiritual emergence, because not everybody is, right?
Mhm.
Not everybody is there. I think the
Right.
first thing, again, those 6 things I wanted to be sure to talk about was, are you safe? Right? To
Mhm.
check in. Are you feeling safe? If you're not safe, then look for support. Find
Right.
those support communities online.
Right.
You can look on Facebook for Shades of Awakening. You can look for When Lightning Strikes. You can go
Yep.
to Clubhouse. You can go to Assist. And there's IANS, the International Association of Near Death Studies,
Yeah.
and find,
Yeah.
right, and know what your questions are. Tell people, this is what I'm needing. This is the
Yeah.
kind of support I need right now, so that when you
Right.
go find these communities, if you're not feeling safe and you're needing support, that you can
Right.
tell them what you need. And
Yeah.
then to slow down, to slow the roll. Like, you've got eternity to become enlightened and be able to
True.
hold the consciousness of an enlightened mind. You've got
Yeah.
eternity. Be
Such a good
gentle,
reminder. Yeah.
and then have compassion with your conversations. be understanding towards others.
Yep.
And then the seventh, again, seek professional facilitation of conversations.
Yeah.
So just little
Yeah.
summary, that's,
Love
you
it.
know,
Yeah. And I would add, which is, I know in there, but like to honor just all of the feelings that go along with like being misunderstood. And,
mm,
it's like we want to be forgiving, but then we also want to like honor the part of us that's just angry that we even have to be misunderstood. And
yeah,
I'd be angry that I have to forgive someone for something I didn't do. It's like just it's like it's just like right. So
yeah.
yeah. So, well, we're going to be doing a lot more together and more on that soon. And I'm so grateful. This conversation just feels like exactly what like my soul has been calling for. It's like, there's this new age spirituality and there's nothing wrong with it. But there's this depth and this gravity and this reverence for this process and this experience that I feel you bring that is so meets my heart in such a meaningful place. And I'm so grateful for you and thank you for being here with us. And I'm so glad you're a part of our community and people can get in touch with you. Let people know how to get in touch with you so that
Yeah, they can find me. Yeah,
yeah,
they can find me. They can use the contact page on my website. It's elizabethjsabet.com.
yeah, and we'll make that easy for
Yeah.
you. I don't know if the
And
link
be
is
sure to
there or
check
there or there or there. So
down,
I just say it's going to
check
be
all of the
somewhere.
resources listed on this YouTube video down there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. What were you going to say?
Oh, just to check the resources,
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
think
for
there's
sure.
like 11 or 12 resources, a lot
Okay.
of them free. So
Yes.
yeah,
And okay, so more to come. Mwah. Big love and to be continued. I so appreciate you.
you bet. Thanks.
Okay.